Is willkommen zurück auf Schalke America. I'm your host, Richard. Joining me on this Monday edition of the podcast, Jack Mangan. How are you, Jack?
Doing well, joining you from the mine shaft as always. Looking forward to getting into an important top-ish of the table clash with some promotion implications.
Yeah, you're in the coal mining cave, which kind of works for our podcast here. Yeah, we got to talk about Darmstadt heading into the weekend. Before the weekend's game started, this was a top spiel in the sense of 1 versus 2. But as the Friday games happened and then early Saturday games, we quickly became a 3rd versus 4th game. With both Paderborn and Elfersberg winning their games. And so they put a little bit more pressure on both these teams. Before we get into the game, let's talk about the rundown for tonight. We are going to talk, obviously, the recap against Darmstadt. Do a quick recap because we got some talking points to get into this game. We're going to talk about maybe a mental stoppage time disease, the lack of service to our strikers, Karius leading from the back of the pack, an update on Džeko's suspension, and the 5-horse race that we now find ourselves in, which is even tighter than it was before. But before we get into all that, like I said, going into this game, this was hoping to be a top spiel and it was a top spiel, but we thought we were going to have a technical, entertaining game. And I think, Jack, as a result of the results from Paderborn and Elfsberg, I think it became a more timid game in the sense that neither team wanted to lose 3 points. And so maybe they played a little bit cautious. Maybe that's how I felt. What were your thoughts on how
That's a fair shout. I think that probably could have played into it for sure. I mean, I think a lot of people are usually result watching, even if they tell you that they're not, or we're just focused on ourselves, one game at a time. Usually bullshit. Usually people are kind of aware of what's going on and whatnot. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
All right. Well, we played Darmstadt in this one at Darmstadt. Obviously, a team who's very good. In terms of the more complete teams in the league, they're up there for sure. With Paderborn and Elfsberg, you can argue with that. They arguably have the best striker in the league, and Isaac Lidberg as well. But they're all led by Kohfeldt. Kohfeldt is a manager who's been around, obviously, with Werder Bremen for a long time, and now with Darmstadt. He's basically owned Schalke. He's won 9 out of 12 games in his career against Schalke, and so it's never good to play. Kohfeldt's a nice manager, but it's not for us. It's not good to play against him because he seems to have dominated Schalke in his career. It seems like.
I'm glad that you said that because I had a similar feeling, and I didn't know if that was completely made up on my part. But yeah, that certainly seemed to be the case. Even when he's like managing teams that are simultaneously struggling in their own campaign, it like doesn't matter. Like whenever Schalke pops up on the schedule, at minimum it's a tight fixture usually.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, he's had he's gotten the better of us.
He has, and it's unfortunate for us. Looking to the lineups in this one, we'll look first at the home team in Darmstadt. In goal, they had Schuhen, very good goalkeeper this season, and he was good in this game as well. In defense, they had Lopez, Pfeiffer, Maglica, and Nürnberger. In midfield, they had Kifish, Akiyama, who's a very good midfielder. Marco Richter, super strong against us always. Fraser Hornby and Marceller with Isaac Lidberg, the man when it comes to strikers in the Zweite Liga. Obviously, the 3 main guys that jump out of the screen for me, or maybe 4 top guys. Isaac Lidberg obviously takes the cake. He's a guy we have to mark tight. We talked about this last week. Someone's going to be on his hip at all times because he is that dangerous. And then for me, Marco Richter is always a guy that seems he just seems to be in the right places at the right times. He's always involved, whether it's with his passing or his shooting. And so this guy I will always worry about. Akiyama, the midfielder, he is just silky smooth. And it seems like anytime we play a Japanese midfielder, they always do very well against us. And then obviously the goalkeeper Schuhen, who is one of the better ones in the league, I think. Anyone from them outside of the ones I mentioned that stood out to you for them?
No, I think those are fair shots. I mean, the only one that I'd give a little bit more attention to, and this is partially just on the basis of this performance, but I thought Hornby was really impressive too, and I didn't really feel like we had an answer for his physicality. No. And I thought he gave us a lot of problems. And part of that, I think, is the attention that's being paid to Lidberg, like you said. It's going to open up some space for somebody like Hornby in behind. But like even so, yeah, I thought he was had a big impact and seemed to be making things happen whenever he was on the ball.
Yeah, that's a great shot. Fraser Hornby. I want to say Hornsby, but Hornby, he's a very good player, and his physical play was problematic for our defense, no doubt about it. Looking at our team, Karius in goal. Obviously, good to have him back in there. Timo Becker, Katic, Kurachai, and Ndaye. No change there. Midfield, really unchanged there with Schallenberg, Alfauzi, with Ljubicic, Carmen, and Aushish in front of him. But then the big change, obviously, with Džeko being suspended 2 games, as we thought initially. It's Musacillo who gets back into the starting lineup in this one. Thoughts on the starting 11 and the start of Silla in this one?
Yeah, obviously last week we were trying to get a little bit cute and, have something to talk about in terms of, and I threw out names like Remmert. I don't know if we talked about Gomes last week or not.
False nine we talked about too. Yeah.
There you go. But look, that's why I'm not a manager, and Muslic is not being that cute and just says, let's just put Musacilla back in, which of course makes the most sense. So that was the notable thing is, he's right back in when he gets the opportunity, with Džeko out, which is good. And we can talk about him, taking that opportunity a little bit later. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, very, very straightforward lineup in terms of what we've been seeing recently. So pretty happy with it.
And I think this news came out at the start of the game, but maybe it happened after. It just all blurred together to me at this point. But obviously the guy who he's replacing, and Džeko, got a red card last week with the high boot. They gave a 2-game suspension to him. Schalke was obviously going to appeal. We always hold that with a bated breath because we're like, it's an appeal. What are they going to do? DFB doesn't really like us. And we'll get more into this later, but it was reduced from 2 games to 1 game. So at least we'll get it back for Karius. So it's just an abbreviated appearance for Musacilla in the starting 11 here. But yeah, we can get more into how Musacilla is impacting the game panned out in this one for sure.
And I want him back for Karlsruhe because, I mean, we should feast. That's one of the worst defenses in the league, if not the worst, actually. Yep. I don't know where they are at the moment. There's got to be somebody worse than them, I think. But
Greater Firth is the worst, but yeah, it's close.
Yeah, that makes sense. Never mind, yeah. But anyway, regardless, if Džeko's in the lineup, you would think that could be a game where we could take advantage of that. And, goal difference can always come into play down the stretch. We'll see. So,
yeah, absolutely. So, get into the game. Early on, you had Carmen got a nice shot deflected by Pfeiffer, forced Schuhen to make a big save. Schalke looked pretty decent starting out. Actually, the opening 10 minutes, I thought Schalke's high press caused lots of issues for Darmstadt. Schalke mostly in the attack in the early phase of the game, which was a good start because obviously you go to on the road against a good team like Darmstadt. You're expecting us to be mostly defensively and they're trying to handle the onslaught coming our way, but it was the opposite for us. I think this one, and then in the 10-minute mark or so, there was a good link-up play where Aushish ended up getting a cross in, headed by Silla into the dangerous area of the box. Schuhen again heads up on that. Really, probably first quarter hour, I think it was mostly Schalke before the tide started to turn. In the 14th minute, you had a quick counterattack where Silla fed Ljubicic, who smacked it just over the bar. So nice early action, I thought, by Schalke. Did you feel that we looked as dominant as at least I felt going into the game?
Yeah, I don't think any of us expected to look, as good in possession or offensively without Džeko, and we knew that it's going to affect, some of the patterns of play and some of the attempts at build-up that we typically have been looking for since he's arrived. But yeah, that being said, I was pretty fine with how we looked, in that context. I thought we were, once again on the road against a good team like Darmstadt. I thought we were very much in it, and yeah, arguably getting the better of it early on. We certainly weren't giving up too many, clear-cut opportunities.
That was until the 18th minute where Marco Richter comes down the pitch. He's causing chaos in the box. Bodies are going down everywhere. Ultimately, he scores the goal. And you watch the replay, he makes this great move to somehow get past 3 defenders and gets a shot off, save. And Ndaye is on the ground. Katic tries to clear it, clears it off, and Ndaye goes into it. So it ended up being an own goal. Highly contested, did go to VAR. We all hoped that it was going to go to VAR. It did go to VAR, and then it took about 5 minutes to kind of figure this one out. But I don't know why it took this long, because once you saw the replay, it seemed painfully obvious that Richter fouled Ndaye and knocked him down to the ground. And then that's why kind of everything got more chaotic than it already was back there. Did it seem clear-cut to you once you saw the replay?
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting because it kind of is similar to what we saw in the previous game with the penalty that we conceded, in the sense of fouling the person that was in possession, but me feeling like he already lost possession by that point. Like the touch that he took, he was not going to recover that. So you can call the penalty, and I understand it's the right thing to do if there's a foul there, but it kind of sucks because that foul didn't stop a successful play from happening. in that sense. So in this particular moment, I felt like Ndiaye was already going to ground, had kind of gotten his touch, and then the foul from the defender comes in afterwards, and I don't really think it affected anything. So I really feel like we got bailed out in that situation. But yeah, it's the same thing that we just saw recently. So obviously these things can get called, and I guess it's certainly the correct call, and it seems pretty obvious that he was, the contact once you saw the replay. But I'm glad that happened. It would have been one of the worst goals Schalke ever conceded. It was a whiffed shot at the edge of the box. That's what it was. He comes running up like he's going to blast it in. He misses it. All of our defenders are kind of like, whoa. He somehow like mispossesses it past our entire back line. Toe pokes, deflected, and Jaya can't clear it. And then Katic
off his head or something like that.
Yeah, hits it into Ndiaye when he's trying to clear it, and it goes in. Yeah, it would have been one of the most obnoxious. And that's like the definition of what you and I have always talked about on this podcast. Like, big game, really good team, really good offense. They're going to score goals. How about we don't concede like that? Like, make them earn it. You know what I mean? Like, make them actually break us down, score a good goal. But it's whatever the hell that was. And so thank God that got called off in that sense. But certainly we got bailed out. I don't think we deserved to get bailed out there.
Yeah, it would have been our butt fumble for the old Sanchez play for the Jets back many years ago. Yeah, and I think I'm glad it was a correct call ultimately, but I think the alarming thing is the ease at which Richter could get by our defense with a simple move like he did, and I'm sure it was unintentional by him. Sure he wanted to get around the defense, but I don't think he meant to do what he did. Nonetheless, he got by every single person on that play, and it's like, had that been Isaac Lidberg or something like that, you'd be like, oh shoot, this is done. But we got bailed out on that play, as you said, kept it at 0-0 at that point. So significant time was taken in that to make that call by VAR. And then shortly after that, there was a play where Marceller went down on his own, looked like he injured his knee or something like that, and that took another good chunk of time. So referees keeping track of all this time is going on here. As the half continued on, you saw a header by Katic off a corner kick just wide. So Schalke still creating some chances. 42nd minute, Aušiš coming down the pitch. Really good footwork, one-on-one. Forced a great save by Schuhen. And again, we had just talked about Richter and Ndiaye in a play. And just before the half, Ndiaye goes down in the box where Richter fouls him. It looks like Richter got the ball first, taking him out. It's exactly kind of what you're saying, just what you come months ago, where Hanover play, same thing, where a guy goes down where the ball gets deflected. And that game was called a penalty. This game it wasn't. Granted, I think we all agree that even Manuel Graffa says, like, you get the ball first and the defender goes down, it's a good defensive play. And Dr. Brown missed that call last week. And this week you saw where it looked like Richter got the ball first before taking down Ndiaye. So I was okay with that call. It would have been nice to get, the same call we got last week, in our favor, but it didn't happen. But I was okay ultimately that wasn't a call to penalty. How'd you feel in that play? You're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. I believe that this play was a little bit clearer cut in terms of the contact being made before the contact with the player. So it's not like identical, but I know what you mean. Like, yeah, I can reference the exact same play for a different reason in the previous sequence that we were just talking about. And the only other argument would have been that it was kind of studs up and maybe there's some contact.
Yeah.
So he kind of goes through the player afterwards in a dangerous way. But yeah, I didn't have an issue with it. I thought it was fine.
Well, we didn't get that call, but Lady Luck would be on our side just moments later off the ensuing corner kick. Ball goes in. It was either Kurachai or Becker kind of deflects it off, hits off the post, Schuhen kind of no man's land, and it falls directly to Musa Sela, who just heads into the goal. He could have missed it. He's missed those in the past. Luckily, this play, he did not miss it. We get the lead, big lead before halftime. Such a crucial goal. I think it was fully deserved at that point because I thought the first half, for the most part, we did a lot of things well, especially in the early onset of the first half. But then throughout the half, you saw us attacking despite not having Džeko. So to go up 1-0 at that point, I thought validation, yes, we're going to get the lead going to halftime. Thoughts on when that chaotic goal went in there?
So yeah, it was Becker, and I have to confirm that and give him credit because obviously I've been critical of him at times recently. But really nice sequence there. Breaking away, winning it definitively, and really nice glancing header back post. Robbed. I mean, like, how elusive has a goal been for him?
I know.
Whether it's he hit another long shot in this
912 minutes. 912 minutes.
But did he hit another like laser from outside the box in this one, which was like really well hit? Like he's had a couple of those. He's gonna get one before the end of the season. I feel like. Yeah. But yeah, decent stuff there. And then I forget what defender it is. Number 6 for them. I'm sorry.
Pfeiffer.
Sorry, yeah, but like so he It's kind of like that Džeko goal where he was unmarked a couple weeks ago. And I know it's difficult, like when the initial contact comes in, but people have to stop ball watching because Musicilla is marked.
Yes.
Musicilla is completely marked until Timo Becker heads the ball. And then the defense just stops and looks at it. And suddenly it deflects right to Musicilla and he's completely unmarked. And he taps it in. So like, yeah, not the best moment from the defense. I understand that kind of stuff happens, but super pleased for Musicilla. Like the offense wasn't going to be working as well without Džeko. We know that. He's been in a tough situation. For him to pop back in the lineup and be opportunistic and, knock that in, good for him. Really happy for him.
Yeah, and I think he did some really good things, both offensively and defensively in that first half, especially where he deserved it, because I thought he was working his ass off. I think he knew the magnitude of Džeko not being there, and he had to be the one to step up, and I thought he was trying. Even though service wasn't necessarily getting to him and Karaman, I thought he was doing everything he could to do the best he can to be involved into the action and make some positive plays, both defensively and offensively. So I'm glad to see that he got a goal there. Like I said, first goal for him, 912 minutes, well overdue by him. He has now 5 goals, and he's just behind, I think, Džeko this season, which is crazy. But then, goal happens right at the 45-minute mark, and then the fourth official holds up 7 minutes. And at first, I'm like, oh, that is excessive. But as I alluded to earlier, we had a lot of stoppages where guys go down with the injury. We had VARs along, so 7 minutes probably seemed fair at that point. And of course, 4 minutes into stoppage, Becker takes down, I think it was Marco Richter, way outside the box, and it's a free kick for him. So Richter takes a free kick, and everyone should be marked at this point. And there's one guy you really should be marking. That's Isaac Lidberg. Ball goes into the box, and it follows his way to unmarked Isaac Lidberg, back of the net, 1-1, just like that. It looked like Cottage maybe lost his marker. Maybe it was Becker or Kurchai in the mix was involved there too. But that's 6 goals in the last 3 games against Schalke for Lidberg, Jack. The Schalke killer does it again.
Yeah, well, Lidberg was inexplicably unmarked, but the reason for that was because there were 3 people marking Pfeiffer, who redeems himself by winning a 3v1 and heading that down directly into the center of the box where there's several Darmstadt players, and then kind of have like a spatial advantage because of, the Schalke players that are occupied with Pfeiffer. And like you said, Lidberg takes a touch into the space kind of between where the Schalke players are, and just crazy hip torque to just fire that off the volley and whip it in. And I think it's another one where Karius is slightly unsighted and potentially also didn't expect maybe the shot to come in that quickly. I think there was an angle kind of like from behind the goal, and I think that makes Karius look better than it does when you watch it just live from the normal camera angle a little bit. So, he gets beaten near post, whatever. But it's Lidberg. He's leading the league now. I think he was tied at like multiple way tie coming into this game or something, and now he's on his own with 14. So, unfortunate that it's kind of a deflection like that, but he's going to pop up and do something at some point. We just got to hope that we're able to make a save or get a deflection. In this case, we weren't.
Yeah, and it's another late stoppage time goal, which we're going to get to here in a little bit. But 1-1 at halftime. Second half wasn't as many fireworks, I think, as the second half. 57th minute, I think there was a great attack where Aushish and El Fawzi really working really well together. Slides it over to Becker. Becker had this great shot that made Shua make a big save on it. And then in the 61st minute, there was some chaos in the box. And Karius ends up making a point-blank save on Fraser Hornby as well. So that was the big moment for Karius in the game, where we had probably the better chances up to that point, minus the goals for both way. And then you get a point-blank save that Karius has to make on Hornby, who's a really good player, who was as physical as he was all game, where no one could really touch him, and Karius makes a great save on him. So some chances here and there going the rest of the way, but ultimately falls 1-1. I say falls. We'll get more into about the stoppage time goal, but 1-1 in the grand scheme of things, a draw put us back in first place, where anything else, a loss would have kept us in fourth place. And so it's nice that we end up getting the result. If you look at the grand scheme of things, it might have been Ryan, honestly, who said something during the game where against all the rivals for the promotion race, we've got 6 points out of the possible 14 or something crazy. It was not bad numbers considering playing the big opponents. So I'm okay ultimately with the 1-1 draw in this Darmstadt game.
Yeah, we've been upset about some drop points that we thought we should have gotten recently, but fundamentally, if you look at the form, we're unbeaten in 6 now, maybe more. So we're not
14 of 18. 14 of 18.
we're when you consider how kind of iffy it's been since January. The fact that we still haven't conceded the lead in the table at any point, like through, I know you said we dropped
That's crazy. I know.
third, fourth place in the middle of the weekend, but throughout a weekend,
Yeah.
the fact that we're still there, even by 1 point now, and it's getting less and less comfortable, I think that should still give you some optimism. Like, we're not playing brilliantly, and we're kind of on an unbeaten run, and we're still in the lead. Like,
it's crazy.
It still feels like we can tighten things up, and maybe I'm just overly optimistic and have been, since we've made the improvements on offense. But that's my spin on it, at least.
I like that because it kind of segues into our first talking point, and it'll be maybe it'll be to help with your optimism, or maybe make you more pessimistic. And before I get to the talking point, just overall thoughts on the starting 11 and how that game played. I think Muslic did well enough. He deserved the goal that he got. Ultimately, all the way around, I thought the defense still could do better. I wanted to see more from Schallenberg and Alfauzi, but we have a couple guys who
quite game from both of them. I thought,
I think they were worried maybe about getting that extra yellow, and you can't play like that, especially when you play a team like Darmstadt or Paderborn or Hanover. So they're very quiet. And I thought Lubicic is rather quiet in this game. Not that he's a noisy player by any stretch, but he just seemed more non-existent than normal. Aushish tried to do his best as well, but I think Lubicic and the two midfielders, holding midfielders, struggled a little bit in this game, at least from being noticeable, I guess. I don't know. What do you think about the rest of it?
No, I think those are all fair shouts. I thought, I don't know. I know she's had some really good moments in this game. I thought he had some frustrating moments too. So he kind of a strange one. I thought Schallenberg and Alfauzi were a little quiet. I agree with you on Silla. Didn't know really what to expect from him, but anytime you're opportunistic and you grab a goal as a striker, your job as a striker is to score goals. If you score a goal, you probably had a decent game. So even though it's deflection and whatever else, I'll take it. Happy for that. Like I said, I thought it was a good game from Becker. Better game from him. He wasn't terrible on the defensive end in this one, and had multiple good moments offensively. I thought the weakest link defensively was Katic. Honestly, I thought he showed a real lack of anticipation in a number of moments. I don't know if it was the Hornby chance that you talked about, but I thought he got smoked. Just completely misread something on one of those too. So
multiple times I thought in the game,
yeah, definitely. And he wasn't great on the goal that was disallowed. Either the Marco Richter one. So yeah.
All right, well, let's get to the five talking points in this one, and we're going to start with the mental stoppage time diseases, I'm going to call it. So, look, I know we're all focused on the Lidberg in this 98th minute or 48th minute equalizer in the game, and you look at the entire season's worth of it, right? These last two games, there's obviously two late goals that happened in those games. One in the first half of this game, and then Hanover game, there was two late goals in that game. So you're thinking, it's just a small thing. But as you look at the year in total, 10 goals we have given up in the last minute of the first half or last minute of the second half. And I know early on in the season, we were worried how early goals we were giving up because, there's some goals in the first 10 minutes of the game a bunch of times. But really, if you look at the end of the first half and end of the second half, those have been big time. And like I said, 10 goals have been scored. And I'll give you a rundown of how this happened. You tell me if you notice a trend of when these are happening. So Matchday 1 against Hertha Berlin, 1 goal we give up late. We end up getting a win in the game, so there's that. A Matchday 11 against Karlsruhe, one time we got a late goal allowed there. That came out to a loss. Matchday 17 against Braunschweig, one time a late goal by Sidi Sane. They got a win in that game. Kaiserslautern, one time in Matchday 19 that ended up being a draw. Matchday 20 against Bochum happened one time. That came to a loss, 2-1 loss there. Matchday 21 against Dresden, it happened one time there, a 2-2 draw. Matchday 23, Magdeburg, one time in that game, but though we got a win in that game 5-3. Matchday 26 last weekend against Hanover happened twice in the last 10 minutes of the game. Ended up being a draw, and then obviously in this game they got a late goal in the first half. That ended up being a draw. So in total, all those late stoppage time goals that we've allowed this season, most of them have been in the second half of the season, Jack. Outside of 3, 7 have been in the second half of the season. And we've dropped in total 14 points as a result of those late goals. My question, I guess, to you is this: you see this high press by Muslic and trying to get these guys play physical, this and that, but it seems like these last second giving up these goals at the end of halves. Is this a defensive collapse, a failure of tactical instructions, or a breakdown of mental like fortitude under this promotion race?
Yeah. It's interesting that you brought this up, and I know you kind of sent me this topic like before the show, and I want to go back and start looking at some of these moments and see if there was anything that changed in terms of our approach or like our shape, whether we dropped off significantly in the minutes preceding this, or if there's something explainable in that. If there isn't, though, it is interesting because you feel like one of the strengths of Muslic as a coach and about Muslic, the teams that he has, is like mental fortitude. So in that sense, you wouldn't expect there to be some sort of like, oh, we're checking out because we're thinking about halftime, 2 minutes before halftime. You would think a team like that would be more mentally locked in than other teams. It could just be that this is a more high press. I mean, like we see Ryan making a comment in the chat. It could be something along those lines where, the style that Muslic is playing, we're tiring out towards the end of halves more than maybe we otherwise would. I don't know if that was something that was happening under Tedesco too. If we go back and look at that, like kind of a similar team in terms of that approach, like, so maybe there's similarities. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's definitely, now that you pointed out, it definitely seems like there's been a recent trend, and especially with how many of those have become draws as opposed to losses, there's a lot of points we're leaving on the table then for sure. So I'm not surprised it's as many as it is. And that hurts when you think about we only have the 1 point lead, and, some of those collapses could have a nice cushion by now.
It's a 14 points. It would have been a really nice cushion. And I think it's a little bit of everything, right? I think it's a little bit of what Ryan's talking about, where we press super hard early on in the game and eventually we just get worn out at the end of the halves. That's for sure. I see that for sure. And I think also what asynchronous says, like from the moment the opposition goes all in trying to get the equalizing goal or game-winning goal, we seem to collapse. And it's the press that Muslic wants to instill in his team. I believe it works. We've seen it many times from the first game against Hertha Berlin all the way through now. Even in this Darmstadt game, it's working. However, we're getting out of the crunch time, and these late goals have not stopped. There's been 7 in the second half of the season already. For a team that's only given up 10 goals in the first half of the season, we've given 7 late stoppage time goals in the second half already. So maybe I don't want to give up the press because that's been really good for us, but maybe, to the points in the chat, maybe we kind of hold off a little bit, temper our pressing and conserve some energy until you get to the second half late in the games. I can't think of the teams. There's a couple teams that come to mind, but I've lost who they were, but I've seen teams in the past and they're the bigger teams, but as a half gets towards the end, they increase the press to really cause the chaos to take advantage of the tired team that they're playing against. And maybe this is something Schalke could incorporate, whether it's against a team that's lower on the table or one of our direct rivals for promotion, kind of hold off on that pressing early in the game, just trying to feel into it. And then as you get closer to the end of the half or end of the game, you increase that pressure on the opposition when they're trying to increase, and hopefully that causes them to cause the turnovers and we get some goals that way. I don't know what the answer is, but it is kind of scary that we're giving up these late goals in the first half or end of the game, and we're dropping so many crucial points that could ultimately cost us, the promotion race.
Yeah, maybe do a reverse like 60-30 where you sub somebody out after the first 30 minutes of the game and have them do their 60 minutes.
Yeah,
get fresh legs towards the end of the first half as opposed to like
maybe
super tight. I have no idea. Yeah, like I said, I want to go back and take a look at some of those moments and see if there's anything we can kind of draw in terms of similarities or not from some of those collapses. But it is strange that you point out there's been such a cluster of those. So you would think there'd be some sort of commonality we can point to, but yeah, you need to get a handle on that. It certainly is shifted the table outlook when you put it that way.
And I just put all the games in the chat so people can look themselves to see if maybe they can find a trend that's happening in all these games and why we're dropping so many goals late in halves and games. Second talking point, Keenan Karaman, and it's not really Keenan Karaman, but it was the lack of service to Keenan Karaman and Musa Silla in the game. It wasn't just that they stopped us on the wings, because that was our main focal point, I think, in this game. Without Džeko, we had to focus on the wings, and they clearly snuffed that out. And I think without Džeko, we lost our identity in him being like the bully, because his physical presence is unmatched. And it seemed like nobody, even Pfeiffer, can't compete with him. And we saw that early in the season. And so it seemed like we tried to play more like a technical, entertaining style play against Darmstadt. And it just set up perfectly for Darmstadt, I think, where they could just make sure that they kept the non-dangerous plays in front of them. we didn't have really a presence to kind of disrupt their defense. Or defense, I felt like they weren't moving that much, and so ultimately it made Karma's job impossible to try to get any good opportunities outside, like with the fourth minute or whatever. He had a really good chance. I mean, thoughts on did Muslic maybe? Yeah, we had Musa still starting in this game and Karma behind him, but maybe this is a game where he should have tried something completely different to striker profile, considering we didn't have Džeko and he was our main talisman when it came to.
Well, that's what we were talking about last week. Is like, did we try
Yes.
to, instead of going with Silla, do we go with, whether it's Karaman, who's not quite the same thing, but at least somebody that we feel like can kind of put his back to goal, hold up play a little bit more. I don't know. Not that Silic isn't incapable of doing that, but like not the way. That's not the way it's been working for sure. And there's been this this gravity, obviously, that Džeko attracts in terms of defensive attention. I think that causes issue for Ljubičić as well, because somebody like Ayoshish at least is like, they're gonna get on the ball. They're like, give me the ball. I'm gonna give me on the ball as much as possible. I'm either gonna dribble somebody or I'm gonna it's like that's not going to change, I don't think, regardless of who's in the lineup.
Yeah.
But I think specifically for Karaman, he was really interplaying for the most part with Džeko, and it's Ljubičić kind of is like the odd man out, but then just like finds these moments with all the attentions on these other players to kind of pop up in space and like play a key pass or a key kind of touch. And I feel like without Džeko, there's a little bit more emphasis on like Ljubičić needing to like be a little bit more aggressive and probably create stuff and kind of provide that like counterbalance to Ayoshish on the left. And like I don't think that was a thing, and really hasn't been. And I think that puts a lot more pressure on Karaman, and then you're never going to have the service to strikers and that kind of stuff. But
and I think like we joked about the false nine as a possible way, but they made us very one dimensional in this game, and Džeko's usually, like you said, our plan B, because he can really cause chaos and really force the other guys to jump in behind him. He can find those passes and really unlock people, whether it's Karaman or Ljubičić or Ashish. And without that plan B, we just stuck with the wing play, and really Darmstadt just snuffed that out. And I think also without Džeko, the physical play wasn't there, the physical pivot, the hold-up play that Džeko is so good with. He's like a release valve. And so not having him there, we lost our ability to bypass, Darmstadt's high press. And so obviously in a game like this, when we have the pressure, we go for these long balls, and what happens? The ball just goes right back to Darmstadt and goes back the other way. And so we lost a lot of possession that way, where instead of having a Džeko either flick it on or hold it up and find a runner, we just carelessly gave the ball away. And I think in a game like this, that was something that was hurting us a lot, at least in the attack, I thought.
Agreed, but we anticipated that coming in. And the question was, what did we say was the key last week? We said, can we stop them from scoring multiple goals?
Yep.
That was literally what we said. Can we keep them to a single goal? We felt like if we did that, there's a good chance we're going to find a way to get something. And look, it was a scrappy corner. To the comments in the chat, like Silla wasn't really super involved in the game. Like he was, putting an effort, but like didn't have a lot of success in terms of creating stuff. But like, it's exactly what we said was going to happen. Like on the road, kept them to and that's what it is. So, the Džeko suspension is just a single game. We'll get him back for Karlsruhe, as you mentioned, and onwards and upwards, hopefully.
Hopefully. And we also the midfield duo of Elfauzi and Schallenberg really struggled in this game a lot. They really need help offensively. There was a couple points where Ashish kind of really switched it over to different sides, and he kind of found Elfauzi on a couple runs. But ultimately, other than that, it was a very quiet from the duo. And I think also not having Džeko there with that vacuum. Usually when Džeko drops into that midfield, like we've talked about numerous times the second half of the season, he kind of frees up the Ljubičić runs, Ashish runs, the Karma runs, or even Elfauzi and Schallenberg runs. And so with him not there, the midfield just seemed like it was just clogged and not in a good way. And we couldn't figure out how to get past, the Akiyamas and the Richters and the Kiefisches of Darmstadt. And it seemed just draw our defense and really made life easy for Darmstadt, I think.
Yeah, I agree, but kind of similar to the last comment I made. Like I feel like the one thing that was positive is that none of the issues we had in this game I felt like were surprising. Yeah, given the context that we were going into this game with, given our opponent, given some of the limitations personnel-wise. And so the fact that we still got a result on the road and it kind of like was fairly predictable actually makes me feel a little bit better about things.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the key personnel that we did have was Loris Karius. I thought his importance on the team is growing more and more each week with games like this, where the defense hasn't been up to par in the second half of the season, but he's kind of been our stabilizing force, and he's helped an unproven defense, and not necessarily these guys are young by any stretch. Karius is about 31 years old or something like that, but it's an unproven defense together. Yeah, sure, they had the success in the first half of the season, but ultimately, as a core unit for a long period of time, they're not. They're all fairly new with each other, and so I guess it's great what Karius has done. Obviously, his 62nd minute save was huge for us in the grand scheme of things. Let's play a little bit of looking into the future here. Next season, I don't have his contract situation in front of me or anything like that, but how comfortable are you to scale 1 to 10 with Karius if we get promoted next year going into the Bundesliga? You think he can replicate some of this with sound defense in front of him, or you think this is maybe he's more of a second division goalkeeper at this point in his career?
No, I think he'll absolutely be able to translate most of these performances to the top division. It's just that our defense is going to be a lot worse, and he's going to be under a lot more pressure. But I mean, the stuff that he's been good at this season, there's going to be a little bit more physicality, obviously, in terms of size and presence. So for aerial balls, maybe he has even more issues, and that's exposed a little bit more than what's been the case in the second half. But pure shot stopping, one-on-one situations where he comes out and that stuff's going to translate and is what he's fantastic at, and part of the reason why he's been considered world class at various points during his career.
1-year contract this summer, so we'll see what happens. I would love to have him if we were to fortunate enough to be promoted. I would love to have him because of the reasons you just mentioned, and I think it would ultimately come down to what Baumann does with defense, right? Can we get like a Maurice Jens or something? Can we strengthen the defense in front of Karius or whoever the goalkeeper is to give us a chance? Because we know we're going to be on the back burner. Possession is going to be very similar to how it was in the first half of the season, where it's going to be mostly the opposition, especially when we play the Bayerns of the world who have a boatload of possession. They hog the possession to like 80%. So we're going to have to have a strong defense, and so we'll see what Baumann can do to help Karius. But I'm completely comfortable with Karius. I think his leadership goes a long way. His experience, though, you could say what it is, the up and downs of Liverpool's and the Besiktas of the world. He has experience, and a lot of these guys don't have this experience. So he won't necessarily be shaking in his boots, so to speak, unless we do have a piss poor defense, and then all bets are out the window at that point. All right, second to last talking point. We talked about this at the beginning of the podcast. The 2-game ban for Edin Džeko was ultimately reduced to 1 game by the DFB, and so I ask you, because this is always the running narrative you hear among Schalke faithful around the world, the DFB politics, and so why now was the game reduced? Was it the Džeko? Obviously, Muslic said the Džeko red card was unintentional. It shouldn't have been a 2-game suspension. But the DFB looked at the tape, and I guess they realized a straight red was probably an overreaction, and maybe that was a fundamentally broke a promotion race with that call. Or did Schalke just make a brilliant, compelling legal appeal in this one, Jack? What do you think what do you think of all this with the red card being reduced?
I would like to think that it's because our dear friend and savior, Manuel Grefa, made such a public stink about the situation, and so the DFB, in light of his comments, decided to take advantage of not looking bad from one of their former own and doing something. But I think when you look at the call, when you look at the foul, to me at least, it doesn't look there's ever really any intent. He's kind of turning into it. He's kind of unsighted by it. Yeah. 2 games seems harsh on its face. I'm not surprised they overturned this. The only reason I would be surprised they overturned it is just because it seems like there's been other situations where it's been very clear cut. The DFB, for whatever reason, when it's Schalke, has not overturned things. So it's more just about our relationship with the DFB and less about the specifics of this call that make this surprising.
Yeah, I mean, there are always going to be people who say the DFB is against us, and maybe there is a case against that and stuff like that. I heard about that with the VA calls that Cologne, they're always going against us, right? But like Ryan says, it's probably not that deep. It's just over a harsh call. And I think what ultimately really the thing is maybe you would have to re-look at how the suspensions are held out for the red cards. And I always reference this to hockey where, someone can get a match penalty, but if it's ultimately deemed that maybe it wasn't as dangerous as we initially thought and there was maybe unmalice to it and it's just something unfortunate to happen, you just have the match penalty and that's it, and they don't get affected for the next game. Or if it's something super serious and someone's trying to take someone's head off, yeah, you get multiple game suspension. And so in a case like this, I think maybe you look at something that's not intentional. Yes, by letter of the law, it is a red card, but a red card for that game is enough for it. And as the malice increases, you increase it to 1 game suspension or 2 game suspension, depending on how severity. Obviously, you have the Alexander Nubel play for many years ago. It's probably easily a 2 game suspension. But something like this, maybe just a red card from this game would have been enough. And I know the automatic red card, automatic 1 game suspension, but I think it's a silly rule, and that's a antiquated rule that maybe needs to be updated a little bit more. We're trying to update the goal line and the offside rules, and why not look at this as well? They want to bring in the green card. Look at what we have with the yellow, red cards and see if we can fine tune them just a little bit so it's not as harsh when these referees accidentally make the wrong call. I'm hoping accidentally make the wrong calls, and that's what I would like to see at least.
Richard for DFB president. That's all I'm going to
say. Yuri says, Yuri, very clever, followed the fine art approach, no intent, fair play appeal, $20,000 fine for what could have been a yellow card. Yeah. And then I guess the last talking point on the Džeko portion of it, now that we got him back for Karlsruhe, you mentioned this earlier, maybe it's a time for a feast. It's certainly going to be a psychological boost for the club, considering how we thought it was going to be without him for 2 games, and now we get him back in a crucial game where
0-0 draw incoming. Now that I said
no, don't say that. Don't say that. But it's got to be good to have him back, especially for a game like this 1 week earlier, and when every win, it could come down to goals, like you said. How big of a return for the club is this return of Džeko?
Huge, as we've been saying on every week. Basically, he's been as advertised. Goal involvement. It's not just scoring, but contributing to goal scoring plays, whether assisting or other ways. Definitely changes the game when he's out there. We look a lot more competent in a lot of ways in possession. So, going up against a team that is defensively exploitable so far this season, to put it lightly, in Karlsruhe. I guess the counter argument would be like, that's maybe when you don't need your top team because you have but to me, it's like I want to take advantage of those games. You know what I mean? It's so tight at the top of the table. If I think we can kind of really put a hurting on somebody, I want Džeko back for that. So I'm excited that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and I think Karlsruhe, I think we're one of the teams who beat us earlier this year with a late goal. Look at my score sheet. Yes, we gave up Matchday 11. They scored a late goal against us, and they beat us in that game 2-1. And so, despite their struggles that they're having this year, they did beat us already once. And so, having Džeko back and potentially helping our cause and getting some goals in this game, I think would do us wonders. We need to have a nice, comfortable win a la Elfsborg this past week, winning 3-0 or 3-1 or whatever it is. It'd be nice to not have to itch and scratch for a win every now and then and get some points. We've already dropped enough points already this season. We need to get some 3 points here down the stretch because we know every team in the top 5 will try to be. We'll be getting at least 3 points here and there. So, but I mentioned, as Ryan says, we definitely need to do our job. The last talking point, it's become a 5-horse race, and not that it hasn't been a 5-horse race. It's just getting tighter. It was like 5 points between 1 and 5, and every week it's going less and less. Now it's 3. At one point it was 2 points during the weekend, and so it's a 5-horse race now. Bring up the league here. You can ignore the score line here, but Schalke obviously in first place, 52 points, followed by Elfsborg and Paderborn at 51, Darmstadt at 50, and Hanover at 49. So it's a 5-horse race here, and I figured let's look at the run-ins for these teams the remainder of the season to see who's got the most difficult run-in, if anyone. I mean, it's a Zweite League. It's going to be difficult no matter what. But let's start with Hanover if my computer wants to work with me here. Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay. I was grabbing my phone. How about us do that? That'd be easier on my phone. I'll get this off the screen here. Maybe not. All right. So we are going to start with Hanover in this one. Got a table here. All right, so Hanover the rest of the way. Their next game, which will be April 5th, is against Elfsborg. That's a huge game there.
Brutal schedule for them.
Followed by Darmstadt, followed by Paderborn, and then they end it with Karlsruhe, Preußen Münster, Bochum, and Nuremberg. That is a brutal gauntlet against the three of the best teams in the league over the next 3 weeks. So maybe there'll be some separation here after those games happen there. Looking at Darmstadt the rest of the way, they have Arminia Bielefeld, followed by Hannover, Greuther Fürth, Elversberg, Karlsruhe, Munster, and Paderborn at the end of the season. That could be a huge game there. Continuing on, Paderborn's remaining games. They have Greuther Fürth, Magdeburg, Hannover, Schalke, Elversberg, Karlsruhe, and Darmstadt. That's pretty brutal too. Man.
All of these are like half bottom, half top. So it's a good mix.
Yeah. Elversberg, they have Hannover, Schalke, Karlsruhe, Darmstadt, Paderborn.
Yeah, that's the toughest one, I think. Yeah, Elversberg is in trouble the next few weeks for sure.
And then obviously to end it with us, we got Karlsruhe next, followed by Elversberg, Munster, Paderborn, Dusseldorf, Nuremberg, and Braunschweig. Going out just by looking at pure head-to-head, like who the teams are on paper, we have the easiest schedule. However, we don't necessarily play against where we should in the table against the opponents, and we're playing some teams at the bottom of the table who historically give people hell at the end of the season, as a Braunschweig will no doubt, because they are absolutely in the promotion and the relegation race. And I'll show this on the screen here so people can see the relegation race. Munster, Magdeburg, Kiel, Bielefeld, Greuther Fürth, Braunschweig, Darmstadt, Dusseldorf are all in the relegation fight at this moment. You think the top 5 is crazy. The bottom 10 in the league are all within a couple points of relegation. So you play any of those teams, which all of us are playing, it could go any which way, really. So the fact that we have Dusseldorf and Nuremberg, which, they're mid-table, but at least maybe they have nothing to play for at that point, and it might be easier.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm with you. I think Elversberg and what do we see? Darmstadt are brutal schedules. Paderborn's brutal schedule. We're all playing each other, so we're going to find a real quick, who's. I mean, we can all cancel each other out, I guess, but man, it is going to be a difficult run-in, Jack. I don't know. We got an international break to kind of think this all through, Jack. I think we need it. As tight as the league is, both top and bottom, we're going to need this international break to kind of recharge here for the home stretch, because it's going to give us a lot of heart palpitations going down the stretch, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, it's going to go real quick between then and the end of the season. So hopefully an opportunity to get a little bit healthier and then make a final push before the end.
Yeah, hope so too. That's all I really got for this podcast. I mean, every player, even Timo Becker, is saying we're just going to recharge now and kind of regroup for the second half push in the next season. If you look at some of the other teams at Schalke, there were some mixed results, some draws and some wins. Women, their game didn't play. I think their opposition didn't have enough players to field a team. So. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting stretch here, a much-needed break here, the international break. We'll see how these teams do. We have 5 players on international duty, so hopefully Džeko doesn't get hurt in that. So, all right, anything you want to run us out, or if not, let people know where they can find you on social media.
At JMMangan, JMMangan on X/Twitter.
You can follow me at R_KHARMAN. More importantly, follow us at Schalke America all across social media. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow, and share our content. And if you're not in the Discord, make sure you join it with the rest of us who just talk Schalke and football all the time. For everyone who's in the chat tonight live, glad to have you guys in here to chat and contribute to the podcast. Enjoy the break, everyone. It's going to be a nice 2-week break off. Next game is April 4th against Karlsruhe. So for Jack and myself, enjoy the international break and get ready for some medical-induced games as we end the season here, the last 7 games. All right, everyone. See you then. Glück auf.